So Ron Barron, the billionaire, speaks for the first time since Elon had this really weird conference call about the earnings in which he basically said that the world is coming to an end, everybody should run and hide, etc., crashing the stock price. Now Ron Barron comes out for the first time and talks about why he isn't selling any Tesla stock.
Since you first invested, the stock is up some 1,600%. Why did you first buy Tesla, and why not sell it now and lock in these gains?
Now, I'm not going to take a side on the conference call. In fact, I don't think Elon did anything wrong. I thought he was a little bit melancholy, but I mean, he always plays down, he under promises and over delivers. That's what Elon does. So I never felt any type of way about it, but a lot of people get stressed out, and Ron Barron is here for the rescue.
Especially after Elon Musk is now worrying about the Cybertruck and the US consumer.
I met Elon in 2010. It took me 4 years of doing research before we ultimately decided to invest. And we invested between 2014 and 2016. We invested a total of approximately $400 million, $380 million. In 3 years is when we were buying the stock, and that was it. And the average price, and we've made about 20 times our money since then. We made at the peak, and we probably made about $5.5 billion in profits so far, and I think we'll make another 5 times in the next 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 years.
So basically, in this clip, they asked him one thing, which is, hey, Ron, the stock is up 1,600% since you bought. You've put in 400 million, you've made 20x on your money. Why not sell your Tesla shares? You're up 20x, my guy. Kind of, that's the question that they were asking him. And then he goes on this very interesting monologue in which he lists all the reasons why he's not selling any Tesla stock, despite what seems to be a bad conference call.
What made us buy it is that he's a mission-driven person. His idea was to try to convert the United States, the world, from using petrol to using electricity. I thought initially it was unlikely he'd be successful. That's when I met him in 2010. 2014, I had become convinced he would become successful. So basically, we invested because I thought there was a big upside. I thought he was a brilliant guy. I still think that. We continue to work on our research in this company all the time. Virtually every week, we're talking to someone there. I was out in Palo Alto a week ago, and I was there for an afternoon, and I met with 2 executives who were the people who were in charge of autonomous driving and also in charge of compute, of what NVIDIA does, the chips. So what we're always doing, we're trying to understand how a business operates and what's special about it and why other people can't do the same thing. And in the case of Tesla, we are convinced that people cannot do what they're doing, and that ultimately it's not just going to be a car company, it's not just going to be a battery company, but ultimately all the other car companies, which 50 years ago elected to become much more profitable and outsource supplies and compute to other people, we're going to be, like Intel was inside of computers, this is going to be Tesla inside of cars. All the cars are going to be using Tesla autonomous driving. No one else can possibly compete.
I'm not going to sell Tesla shares because Elon Musk is the CEO, he's the founder, he's the living, breathing spirit of Tesla, and he's a mission-driven guy who always delivers. And he also says, look, I'm investing in people. This guy is the best CEO in the business. He's proven it time and time and time again. I'm not going to bet against him. In fact, he said, look, we're going to make 8 or 9 times our money from this point on Tesla. How about that? So if you kind of translate it, what he's talking about is what? $2,000 per share? $1,500 per share? I mean, you do your math. But what he also said, look, Elon made us a lot of money. He made our clients a lot of money. It's not as if Elon just lost the ability to generate cash flow and create revolutionary products literally out of thin air. I mean, the guy knows what he's doing. He has some sort of a quality of R&D which is unrivaled. If you look at other car companies, other energy companies, other robotic companies, they're all good companies, but the quality of Tesla R&D, research and development of Tesla, is unrivaled. Who else even comes close to Tesla full self-driving? Autonomous driving right now is a wide open road for Tesla literally to conquer. Nobody is even second. There's nobody close with miles, with amount of data, with quality, with how close they are to actual autonomous driving. How about robotics? How about energy? How about all that stuff? I don't want to regurgitate the same old things, but the quality of R&D is so much better than anybody else. So he's not only first and is leading, he's getting faster and he's leading more and more as time goes by. So his lead actually grows exponentially. Who's going to catch him? And even though the markets are not that good right now, Tesla is still the best in the business. Why bet against it? Now, he also said, look, Tesla is much more than a car company. In fact, it's much more than an energy company. What he's talking about in his mind, I think, is the fact that he sees FSD, full self-driving, as the real engine for the business, for Tesla, because he says, look, whether Tesla sells 5 million cars or 20 million cars, it doesn't matter. The way he sees it is that FSD becomes an industry standard, much like, in this example he used, Intel chips became an example, right? They became a standard. In the future, every single car you're going to see on the road is going to have Tesla FSD in it. Why? Because there's nobody comes close and they're almost done. So if Tesla is going to be making so much money off of licensing their FSD technology to every single car company out there, they're much more than a car company and much more than an energy company. They're a software company. In fact, a software company with a monopoly on a very valuable service.
You've invested essentially not only in these two companies in a big way, but in one man. How do you account for that risk reward? There's something known as a key man risk. How do you think about that bet?
When I was in Palo Alto, they gave us access. Elon gave us access to meet with the head of compute and also with the head of autonomous driving, and for a half hour apiece. He doesn't want those people talking to investors. He wants them working in the business. And the compute person, his dad was an immigrant coming from Ireland, and he worked in a kitchen. And he goes to school and he becomes a brilliant computer guy. And he gets a job at Apple ultimately, and he runs the Apple Apple business, the Apple Compute, very, very important business. And then he gets recruited to go to Tesla, and he's now 8 years at Tesla running that business. He says he has no turnover. Everyone there who works for him is wealthy, but there's all a mission. So I said, well, so why did you leave Apple to go to Tesla? He says, well, Ron, at Apple, I had a very important role there, and Tim and Steve Jobs never came to visit me once, not once. And for when he's at Tesla, Elon comes in every quarter for a couple, 3 hours, and we talk. And he comes off initially with a big, broad question, and then he drills down. And the question, he says, I can answer the question first, and then he keeps drilling down, and he says, oh my God, how could he ask that question? How do I not know the answer to that one? So the basic is, he says, there is not another company that he's aware of where there's a brilliant engineer with a photographic memory who remembers everything and can transport information that he gets from one area to another. So as a brilliant guy, he cares about everything he does, and he is interested in how everything works. So James Gorman goes to visit him from Morgan Stanley, goes to visit him and tells me about this story about walking through the factory and stopping at every station and him knowing the name of everyone there and what everyone does. And Walter Isaacson tells me, who wrote the book on Elon, tells me he was with him for 2 years. And he says, I have one example, Ron, he says, I'm walking through a plant with him and some engineers working on a valve that they can't figure out how to make it work. And Elon looks at it, as he's just on the fly, looks at it and says, do this, boo, 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 do this, and then keeps walking. They try it and it works. And so everything this guy does is like that. So now how do I get comfortable with one person being so brilliant and being in charge? This is like Da Vinci. This is like a businessman. This is Da Vinci. If you are an individual and you are a graduate of a top engineering school, you want to work for either SpaceX or Tesla. So you want to work with other brilliant people. You want to work on a mission. You want to work in something that's really important. You want to work in something that you think is going to be relevant and fascinating with other people like you. And he gets the greatest people. He had 3.5 million people apply for jobs last year at SpaceX and Tesla. 3.5 million people, 30,000 jobs. It's harder to get into getting a job at Tesla and SpaceX than to go into Harvard. So they have amazing engineers that are all motivated, highly motivated to accomplish a goal, and that's what they're going to do. So whether Elon's there, of course, it's riskier when the company's smaller than when it becomes larger. But as you grow, I'm betting that he's going to stay alive for at least 5 or 10 years, I think that's a good bet. We'll see. He's got plenty of security.
To switch gears, we've had a surge in yields this year. The Fed has raised quickly and often to fight sticky inflation. Now we have two wars going on around the globe. Just recently, a hedge fund legend, Paul Tudor Jones, said it's really tough to own stocks here, given the geopolitical risks and the U.S. fiscal situation. Do you want to own stocks from here? And what is your outlook for the stock market and the economy right now?
So I started as an analyst in 1970, and I was in debt and living in my friend's basement, and I had $600 of cash. And my credit was so bad that when I wanted to get a telephone, I couldn't get a telephone. They said they don't want a $600 deposit. I said, if I give you $600, I won't have money to get to work, and I won't be able to pay the bill every month. And they said, well, I'm sorry, we can't give you a phone. So ultimately, there was a payphone in the lobby, and I asked the doorman to please answer the phone, Ron Barron's residence, Mr. Barron's residence. And so girls will be calling, and so answer the phone, and then just ring me up, and I'll run down the stairs, and they'll think I have a butler. So that was my plan originally. And so I had, zero. And in fact, I know Paul Tudor Jones from 1987, and he and I were on Barron's Roundtable together for several years. And, amazing guy, and he called the market crash in 1987, and that's what made him so successful, I think. He wouldn't have been successful anyway. He's a really smart guy. But he's a trader. I'm an investor. And so the way I look at the world is that when I became interested, I went to law school at night on a scholarship and worked in the patent office at daytime in the 1960s. And that was draft exempt, so I didn't have to go to Vietnam. But when I think about in the 1960s, when Robert Kennedy ran for president, the real Robert Kennedy, ran for president, in 1968, the GDP of our country was $800 billion. Now $27 trillion. So basically, it's up. So in the 1960s, there were assassinations, there was Vietnam, there was March on Washington, there was civil rights. President Kennedy was assassinated, Martin Luther King was assassinated, Robert Kennedy was assassinated. I mean, just the cities were on fire. They were being burned because of after King was killed. And yet, it felt like everything's coming apart. And yet, the Dow Jones was then 1,000. It's now 34,000. 34 times. And the GDP was then 800 billion. It's now 27 trillion, 34 times. So basically, and that's about 7% a year growth. And it's about 4 or 5% inflation and about 2% real. And I happen to think that, and since now we are to 2023, we had a pandemic. We have a war going on in Ukraine. We have a horrible war going on in Israel. We have, inflation. You had inflation in the 1960s also. Interest rates high are now 5 or 6%. When Volcker was there, interest rates were 18%. And you had a terrible recession. So we've had recessions, and yet the market's up 34 times. And with 1 year of good news, 1 year, 1989, when the wall came down between East and West Germany, 1 year the news was good. Every other year it's been bad news. And yet the market. So the reason for that is because the value of your money falls in half about every 14 or 15 years. Regardless of what they tell you, we're going to have 2% inflation, for a little bit, but then it'll go back up to 4 or 5 again. But on average, it's going to be 4 or 5% for my entire lifetime. That means that everything doubles in price every 14 or 15 years. And the way you can hedge against that is you can invest in the market, which goes up about 10% a year, on average, including dividends and everything. So the way I think about it is that the investments that I have are investments for the long term in businesses where I think we're going to double our money over a period of time. Instead of 10 years, we're going to try to double our money every 5 years.
He also says, look, at this point, even if you think that the market is weak, the macro, et cetera, you're talking about the leader. So you're investing in the leader. So what's going to happen if the market goes south? Everybody who's kind of wishy-washy, they're going to get annihilated. The leaders will survive, and then when the storm blows over, they're going to clean out house. You remember that boat that Forrest Gump bought in Bayou Labatra, and then every other boat got destroyed, and his accidentally survived, and then he became the shrimp king of the river? It's literally what he's talking about. Ford, GM, and all, they're basically hanging on by a thread. If Tesla survives and they go away, Tesla makes a shit ton of money. Now, he also talks about the fact that he thinks Tesla sells 15 to 20 million cars in the future. I know that sounds like a lot, but he's talking about the way, way far away future. And even that is kind of insane to think about today. But look, if he's right, if he's talking about 15 to 20 million cars and 100% of the licensing market of FSD, the current valuation is way, way below where it should be. Now, I don't know if he's right or wrong about this. It's your choice. I'm way closer to the opinion that is right, that is wrong. So on that spectrum, I'm way, way, way closer to Ron Barron than to the fact that he might be wrong. But he also tells this interesting story about how engineering is so good at Tesla because they have literally the best people. Now, the numbers are insane. For every 3,500 jobs, you got 3.5 million applicants. They have literally the best people come in there. So if you already have the best technology, you have the best margins, you have the best machinery, and you have the best people, I mean, you're literally going to win. Obviously, on top of it all, he talks about Elon being kind of the Midas. Everything he touches becomes gold. And he says, look, there's a key man risk here. When he talks about this little story, I believe Elon is going to stay alive for the next 5 to 10 years. What he's actually referring to is the key man risk. Because Elon is the living, breathing spirit of the company, there's a fear that if he goes out and goes away or something happens to him, that Tesla gets wrecked. Tesla already has a self-sustained, independent operation. It's not about Elon anymore. Obviously, it's great to have him there, and he's a huge, huge asset for Tesla. But even if Elon steps away tomorrow, remember, he stepped away for a whole year working on this Twitter X thing. Nothing happened to Tesla. I mean, Tesla has an independent existence. It's not just about Elon anymore. That's a fable. Now, he also talked about generally the market, about how the market is weak right now and people projecting some, a horrible macro that's going to bring down the economy. He says, look, the United States is still the best economy in the world. Zoom out and you'll find out that it's always been good to investors to be in the money. I've talked about it myself multiple times. The United States have the best borders. It has the strongest army. It's the world's reserve currency for the next 50 to 100 years at minimum. Friendly neighbors to the south, friendly neighbors to the north. Massive resources, food and energy. I mean, who's going to compete with the U.S. economy? Look, the evidence is right now. 11 straight rate hikes in a row. 5% GDP. And a pandemic. And a couple of wars. He basically said, look, it's never a bad time to bet on the U.S. economy. At worst, you're going to do 10% a year if you stay in the index. At best, if you mix it up with some good choices, you're going to make 20% a year if you pick good companies like Tesla, et cetera, et cetera. So I couldn't agree more. Every time I hear Ron Barron speak, the man is on point. And shout out to Elon for being the OG. If you like this channel, subscribe. If you're not, don't subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.